Want to know the secret to getting your kids' book published? Well, we all do. I can't tell you the secret, but I can give you some tips on how to improve your chances. Stick around and find out how. Hi, I'm Marty Chan, author of the book Haunted Hospital, a creepy tale about a group of teenagers who decide to role play as modern day Ghostbusters. They sneak into an old abandoned hospital to look for ghosts and spirits. But what they find instead is far more terrifying. Now, thanks to the Writers' Trust of Canada and the Amplified Voices program, I get to share with you some insights into how to prepare your manuscript for a kid's publisher. Now, in schools, teachers had a strategy to help those young readers find the right book for them, especially when it came to the reading level. And the strategy was a very simple thing called the five-finger rule. Basically, a kid could pick any book they wanted from the library. Then, once they had the book they wanted to read, they'd just open the book to a random page and start reading that page. For every word that they did not understand, the kid had to hold up one finger. If they got to 5 fingers before they got to the end of that page, they knew that this book wasn't right for them now. And it helped the kids find the books that were interesting, but also at an appropriate reading level for them. Now, I'm going to borrow that strategy and apply it to preparing your kid's manuscript for a publisher. So there's a 5-finger rule for preparing your manuscript, but the only difference is, in this case, if you hold up a finger for any one of the things I mentioned, it means you have to go into your manuscript and do some revision to make sure that it's right for the publisher. All right, so let's get into it. All right, finger number 1. If you see Aesop showing up in your manuscript, you know you've got to make some changes. And by that I mean Aesop's fables. You know, those moralistic stories that illustrate something important like, slow and steady wins the race. Now, I'm not trying to knock Aesop's fables. They do a very good job of illustrating a moral. What I'm talking about is the need for a narrator or storyteller to conclude the story with, and the moral of the story is. It's basically telling us what we've already seen, and it taps into the classic rule of writing, show, don't tell. If you're a reader and you come across a story where they actually state what the theme or the message of the story is, you'd probably feel a little insulted that someone didn't trust your intelligence to actually be able to discern what the theme or the message of the story is. Well, same thing with kids. If you take the time to show the theme in action, they're going to get the point of the story. But if you state it, well, then you're underestimating your reader, which is something you don't want to do whether you're writing for kids or adults. So, finger number 1, if you see Aesop, kill him. No, don't kill him. Just get those morals out of your story. You can still have the themes, just don't state them. All right, the second finger that comes up is if you see parents, adults, authority figures who are grown-ups come into the story and help the kids, in particular, do the stuff that the kids want to do. If you think about the old Greek tales, we think about Deus Ex Machina, where the gods would come in and help the heroes solve their quests. Now, today, the equivalent of those gods would be the adults in the kids' lives. Parents, guardians, teachers, authority figures. Now, those characters can be in the story, but if they do too much for the kids, it kind of takes away the kids' agency. They don't have the power to be the heroes of the stories. They wind up sitting, think about this. A kid wants to drive a car, but what do? They have to sit in the back seat while mom and dad get lost someplace in the city. Same thing when a kid reads a book. They want to be the ones who drive the story. And if they see the heroes of the story, the kid protagonist, sitting in the back seat while an adult does all the fun things, those kid readers are going to be like, maybe I'll play a video game instead. So if you see parents doing too many things to help the kids or adults doing too many things to guide the kids, find a way to reduce the role of those adults and make sure that you empower the kid characters to be the heroes of their own stories. Now, the third finger is when you have exposition disguised as dialogue. This is a case where you've got a character in the story who has to explain something about, a plot element, a backstory, or maybe they're revealing something about their character, and they have this incredibly well-crafted but long monologue that everybody sits quietly and listens. Now, while you may be in love with that exposition, a kid reader is like, yawn, because kids like action, they like dialogue. They don't like sitting and listening to somebody for a long time. I mean, if you doubt that, go into a classroom and see how long kids sit still when a teacher is talking. So if they can't sit still in real life, imagine what it's going to be like when they read long passages of exposition disguised as dialogue. So if you see those long passages, a good way to break up those passages is, yes, there are other characters who are listening to the exposition, but have them respond. Maybe they will interrupt. Maybe they'll interject. Maybe they'll contradict, or maybe they'll add something so that it becomes more of a dialogue scene and less of one long expository piece of dialogue. So always remember, break up that exposition and make things a little more active in that scene, and that will help you avoid the dead zones in your story. Now we're on to the fourth finger, all right? And this one is all about slang. I know that when you're working on, let's say, a historical novel or a period piece, yes, embrace the slang of that era because it helps set us in that particular time period. But if you're writing a contemporary or current modern day story, you've got to be careful with slang, right? I know, you want to sort of capture the voice of kids today, but unfortunately slang has the shelf life of, of expired milk. No. It more has the lifespan of a fruit fly. And if you think about this, when you get your story together, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to find a publisher to put your book out. And even if the publisher responds to you within, let's say, miraculously within a year, it's still going to take another year to 2 years for that book to come out. Now, if you think at best case scenario, 2 years before your book comes out or 3 years before it comes out, imagine what happens to the slang, right? And I know this from firsthand experience. I remember when I used to go into schools to do author visits. I would try to, use what I thought was current at the time in terms of slang. And the one thing I remember using was the word dab. I would use the dab, a reference to the dab, to sort of show the kids that I was current. And in the beginning, the kids loved it. They laughed at the old man who was using something that they knew. But then I knew the dab died when I went to a school, did a presentation for a group of grade 6 students. And as soon as I brought out the reference of the dab, I could hear groans and eyes rolling in the back of the head. Yeah, I literally could hear their eyes rolling into the back of their head. So I knew at that point the dab was dead. And here's the thing, it was only in the span of about 6 months before the dab died as a cool slang for kids to use. So if in 6 months slang dies, imagine what happens to it in 2 years' time. So a good way around this is, instead of using the modern day slang that you hear kids using, invent your own slang for the characters in your book, and that way your language and your book stays evergreen. All right, the fifth and final finger, which then, it forms a fist that you can punch through the wall of rejection so you can get your book published. The fifth finger is a bandwagon. If you can notice a bandwagon in your story, time to reconsider the shape of the idea. And when I say bandwagon, think about, the whole notion of people jumping on the bandwagon, something really popular at the time. Now, if you remember what I talked about with slang, same rule applies here. The time it takes for an idea to be developed, accepted, and then published is the time it takes for current trends or popular genres to go stale. And so I know as writers, we all do the same thing. We do our market research. We'll walk into a bookstore and see what's the best seller on the shelf, or on Amazon, we'll see what's ranking the highest, and we'll think those are the genres we should be writing. Be careful of that, because if you pick a genre that's hot now, you have to know that it could die out by the time the book is published. And what's worse, there are thousands of other writers who are doing the same market research and thinking that's the genre I'm going to write. And so publishers, editors are swarmed with story ideas in the same sort of hot trending topic or theme. And what editors, publishers, agents are looking for is something original and unique to your voice. So if you're looking for story ideas that you want to develop, think about something that means something to you rather than what's a bestseller on a shelf. Because if you can show your original voice, that's going to cut through all those other ideas that may be derivative of a current trending story or genre. And if you can show an original voice, hey, guess what? You'll have a publisher, an editor, or an agent who's interested in your manuscript. So keep away from bandwagons whenever you can. And there you have it, the 5-finger rule for preparing your kid's manuscript for a publisher. Remember, kill Aesop. Put the parents in the back seat. Don't disguise exposition as dialogue. Try to come up with your own slang and stay off the bandwagon. Remember, if any one of those 5 things show up in your manuscript, you know you've got to do some work before it's right for a publisher. And on that note, I hope you can take those tips and put them to your manuscripts. If you're looking for some examples of good books for kids, start off by checking out my book, Haunted Hospital. And by the way, if you're looking for some writing tips, I do have some tips for kids on my YouTube channel, but I won't stop adults from using those tips in their writing as well. My thanks to the Writers' Trust of Canada and the Amplified Voices program for making this video possible. Take care, and we'll see you around.